Turning coal into liquid fuel is an even worse idea than burning it outright and produces twice as much CO2 as petroleum fuels do that we use in our cars today. Plus, it pollutes a large amount of water and has proven to be far from viable economically without public subsidies. So as we battle climate change and move to a clean energy economy, liquid coal is clearly the wrong place for public funds to be invested. And that's true here as well as in other parts of the country where this idea is on the drawing boards. Between energy efficiency and coal, we sense a sense of climate ambiguity in this region. It's deepened by the state's in and out participation in the Midwest Governors Association's Greenhouse Gas Accord. Right now, a regional carbon cap is on the desk of 6 Midwestern governors, but not Governor Strickland. We're trying to change that, and I hope you'll join us. There are some decisions to make in planning out the state's energy future and determining how Ohio can and will contribute to climate solutions. Promoting efficiency first, aggressively committing to renewables like wind turbines in Lake Erie should be promoted prior to committed reliance on our traditional approach to coal. And your elected leaders will have a role, do have a major role in the national debate about how America will step up to this challenge. Ohio congressmen and senators will be so central to the discussions of the national climate solution that one prominent blogger has said that any legislation will have to pass the Sherrod-Brown test, otherwise it won't pass. So here's what we think needs to happen on the national level, and more importantly, why it is in Ohio's best interest to be a leader in finding the solutions. If we want to deal with the challenge of climate head-on, it will require a multi-stakeholder process of the business community, the environmental community, the labor community, and political entities to create a cap on carbon that we so desperately need. This federal climate policy can then inform our international efforts to ensure a fair and equitable solution for the planet. This effort is now underway in Congress. Over the last 3 years, NRDC has been part of the U.S. Climate Action Partnership, working closely with leaders in the business community from GE to Alcoa to DuPont to Caterpillar to GM to Duke Energy. And we've worked through the specific elements of climate legislation that will be necessary to garner both the support of the business community and the environmental community. It's an unusual alliance, to be sure, where our interest for action is matched with the business community's desire for predictability in their future business plans and risk aversion. As Jim Rogers, who's the CEO of Duke Energy, says, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And that's why he's involved. And he's right about that, too. U.S. CAB drew up a joint blueprint for action in January, and the document has become the template for the legislation on climate that's now being considered in Congress and what we call the Waxman-Markey bill. It's also called the American Clean Energy and Security Act, and it is an historic piece of legislation that has the power to jumpstart whole new industries, creates millions of good-paying jobs across America, and generate hundreds of billions of dollars in energy savings and benefits to low-income families. It will also demonstrate American leadership in the international conversations as the world heads toward the dialogue in Copenhagen in December 2009, while the post-Kyoto agreement will be determined. This bill will touch on every sector of the economy, but in the end, it is based on a few simple ideas: that American ingenuity can tackle big problems, that it's only fair for polluters to pay for putting dangerous emissions into the air, and that protecting our health and our children's future is a sound investment. It's true that a law limiting carbon will have its costs. However, the bill is specifically designed to ease the costs of the transition for heavy industrials, for utilities, and for the consumer. In the end, though, the goal is to transform our energy future to one that is clean, unleashes new and emerging technologies for wind, solar efficiency, and for coal by major investments in the carbon capture and storage technology. This is a vision we must realize. The planet depends upon it. After more than a decade of working on climate change, I welcomed the House Energy and Commerce Committee's historic vote 2 weeks ago to advance this bill to the House floor. Not only did the bill clear a major hurdle coming out of the committee, but it also had backing from lawmakers across the nation, including Representatives Betty Sutton and Zach Space of Ohio. I view their broad support as a testament to the bill's immense economic and energy potential. The bill will be considered by the House later this month, marking the first time in history that the House has voted on a comprehensive climate and energy bill. Passage in the House will pave way for action in the Senate, and we thank Senator Brown for his leadership on this issue and look forward to working closely with him as the bill makes its way through the Senate. The goal is to get a good bill on the President's desk before the Copenhagen meeting in the fall. The work doesn't stop at the federal level because climate change is a global problem and we need a global solution. We're in the countdown to Copenhagen, as I mentioned. Copenhagen is where the real rubber meets the road. With the U.S. not involved over the last decade, the last international climate treaty was largely toothless, but the growing threat of the climate crisis is not lost on the rest of the world. Other countries will also bear the brunt of climate refugees, diminished resources, and growing conflict. There's a broad recognition that change must come, and it must come quickly. And most governments, including China, have made it clear that they are prepared to deal with the issue if we are. And I think that's the key element. The United States needs to act first. That is why action this year in Congress is so critically important. It sends a signal to the rest of the world that's been lacking. It frames the solution with the United States in the lead. If the U.S., the traditionally largest carbon polluter in the world, is willing to take action, we will be leading the rest of the world to the negotiating table. So what does a global climate solution mean in Ohio? Well, first and foremost, and most importantly, it means jobs. And that's something we're critically aware of. Jobs is the #1 issue in America. It's a #1 issue facing the Congress, and no legislation will be designed without having that as the foremost of the design. So there have been quite a number of studies done over the last year trying to determine how many jobs can be created through the clean energy economy, how many jobs will be created in individual states, and how quickly can they be created. Last year, a University of Massachusetts study out of Amherst that looked at that across the country identified 80,000 jobs that could be created in Ohio in a matter of years, not decades, but in a matter of years. Senator Brown yesterday proposed legislation in Congress to actually determine exactly how many manufacturing jobs would be created out of this. And that's critical. We need to know the answers to those things. We're talking about opportunities for steel workers who build wind turbines, electricians who install solar panels, construction workers who retrofit buildings and homes to make them more energy efficient. We're talking about truck drivers, software engineers, transit planners, building inspectors, and waste oil refiners, all of whom can find a place in Ohio's green and clean energy economy. Why so many opportunities? Because clean energy jobs are more labor intensive and require more domestically made materials than the traditional fossil fuel industry. Studies show that for every $1 million spent on clean energy, we can create 3 to 4 times as many jobs as we spent on an equivalent amount of fossil fuel investments. That's really important when we're looking at what the economic situation is today. NRDC is working with the steelworkers and other unions in the Blue-Green Alliance to identify and support progress that will unleash these jobs. We completely understand how critical the job creation issue is. It has to be real, and we're going to make sure that it is. And all of this fits squarely in President Obama's vision for America's economic recovery. Building a clean energy economy is the work of this generation. We can continue to invest in dirty, unsafe energy sources, or we can invest in a brighter future, one that values American ingenuity with clean, safe energy technologies.